I'm just going to start off with a little introduction. So when I was in year 2, there's like a talent show going on. So I was like, I want to do that talent show. And at that time, I thought I was Beyonce. So I was like, I'm going to sing and dance. So I prepared a little something and I showed my dad. And he watched the whole thing with a straight face. And then he said, you're not doing that. You're going to do a poem. And at first I was crushed because I was like, how could you let me give up on my dream? But after doing the poem, I ended up really loving poetry, and it like inspired me to start writing poetry. So this is a perfect example of like why my dad is my role model. He's honest, close to me, and a guide, steering me onto the right path. For me, a role model is active, not passive. It's more than someone you look up to. It's someone who actually makes an effort to impact your life. Being a role model is a responsibility. We all know how hard it could be to realize your role model isn't perfect. When you're disappointed in your role model and you can't figure out what drove them to let you down, and yet we hand out the title so quickly to anyone famous or successful. So we want to work out who are our everyday role models, how do we challenge role models, what standards should we set for role models in the media, and do we even need role models? Are we enough for ourselves? So let's just start by introducing ourselves. So let's start with Osei. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Osei Johnson. I'm a jack of all trades. I'm an actor, model, dancer, getting into politics a little bit, and activism. So yeah, I do a bit of everything. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Sorry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'll do it. My name is Tyreke. Man, when you put titles, I don't know what to really say because I do a lot of things. So I guess I'm an entrepreneur, have my own business, Thai Seasonal Sorrow, and do a bit of podcasting, which is on the Unicast. Shout out to my people. And yeah, I do a couple of more things, but that's for me for now.
And Max.
Hi, yeah, I'm Max. I am a musician, I'm a drummer.
Oh. Okay.
I am a performer as well. I front a couple of cover bands and a couple of original bands as well. And yeah, I also like to participate in a little bit of not necessarily politics, but activism as well. So yeah.
That's good. So let's just jump right into our first segment, which is about everyday role models. So let's just start by asking, who was your first role model? And can you think of a story when they impacted you? Who wants to go first? Anyone could go.
I guess I'll go then. So I don't think I ever really considered role models. I've never really thought about it too much. But I feel like the first people that I considered role models were probably more like idols to me. But that kind of does beg the question, like, what constitutes a role model? Is it just idols? Is it influencers? Or is it, is it famous people? Or is it just people that are in our lives personally? That not a lot of other people particularly necessarily look up to. So yeah, people that are in my chosen career path. I feel like were the first people that I really considered role models. As a drummer primarily, I used to listen to metal when I first got into drumming. So there were a couple of drummers who just are really, really technically skilled and prolific in their writing, also multi-instrumentalists that I really looked up to because, it seems like it's really therapeutic to be able to express yourself that efficiently via music that isn't even like, it's not even like singing or writing lyrics. It's just it's just expressing emotions through rhythms and frequencies. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I feel like there are a couple of people that I idolized in the music industry. But then thinking about it, my first actual role model, because in my opinion, it's more of a subconscious thing. I think to all of us, whether they're good or bad, the first role models that you have are your parents. So I would say that my mum was probably my first role model, because she raised me on her own, and she's just great at everything. You know how mums are, and they just manage to spin every plate that is that they've put in front of them or has been put in front of them, and it's just when you sort of think about that, it's an aspiration. That's what you really want to be able to achieve. So yeah, I think that's who my first role model was.
That's good. Does anyone else remember who their first role model was?
I just want to jump in on Max's point about everybody's first role model being their parents. Whilst I think that's true for most people, I think we do have to take into account that there are lots of people who don't have that connection. And I think we have to take note of the fact that these people often look up to other people in their lives. So it's just my view of what a role model is, and what your first role model is someone that you can look up to and want to be like. And it can be anyone who you sort of identify with in any sort of way.
That's a good point. So do you remember who your first role model was?
My first role model was it was a character from a TV show, just because he was like one of the few Black men that I saw on TV at that point in time. And I was like, yeah, that's like that sort of mindset that he has to have to be able to get to that point is what I want to have, that sort of resilience. So yeah, that was my first role model.
That's good. Tyreke, where do you stand on the parents question?
Yeah, I think to touch base with everyone, I think, yeah, I mean, for most people, initially their parents or a parent figure, it doesn't have to be their actual parent, is that first touch of base in which they guide you, they provide for you. For me, it would be my mother and my nan who provided for me, who were the ones that send me to school, took the time out of their day to teach me after school. All these things flowed past, and they struggled, single parent household, and all these other occurrences that happened. But as I got older, I realized even though when they did their best, there was just some things they lacked in it, and that caused a real disruption in me, because my mind for them was that they were perfect or the best that they can be. And I had to realize that for me personally, after a certain while, you have to extend that kind of role model bracket to see who is really the ones who are providing that need for you when you get older. So for me, it would be my mom and my nan. But then for me personally, the one that kind of changed my life is I looked into different things, different worldviews and perspectives. And for me, I love the teachings of Jesus Christ, because for me, I personally think that kind of moral example, that kind of perfect, the best kind of perfect moral example that I can be in the right place, in the right time, in the right context. I think for me, it's that thing that role model is that thing that provides that kind of metaphysical answer of what is love, what is life, is there life after death, and that kind of historical and natural perception of which is true too. So it ascribes to me to all forms of reality, not just how I feel or just a specific part of my life. That's for me anyway.
That's a good point. People can look up to a religious figure in that way. So you said he is the perfect example, right? So do you think it's more striving to be perfect or striving to be the best version of yourself?
That's a good question. That's the thing. Well, based on my view, worldview, and the religion I ascribe to, or more so the faith that I go to, it's not about being perfect, because I realized you can't be perfect, especially in this world. You can never be perfect. But it's to do the best that you can with the resources that you're dealt with the cards you're given to actually deal with the situations the best way possible. So, for example, I may be in an environment where there's a lot of drug dealers, in a council estate and all these other things. The best way for me to move forward is to live that example of not entertaining the nonsense, to stand up for when it's right, for me to stand up, to actually help my neighbor as I would want my neighbors to help me if I was in that circumstance. So to me, it's kind of that dealing with the world as it comes, not trying to reach this standard of perfection, which you can never reach, but to realize, hey, there's something beyond that, that it's not just something you can just live by, but you can also experience too. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Osei, you talked about how your role model was a cartoon character. So, do you guys think it's important for young people to have representations in the media of people they can look up to?
100%. I think, especially like for me personally, I think the people who have had the most impact in my life have been people that I've recognized have a similar or could have a similar experience to me personally. And I had a conversation with someone recently, and she said a similar thing. As a queer woman, she was like, yeah, it's like, it means so much to me to have representation in the media that I can see myself in, because it's not just a case of like, oh, that's what I want to be like. It's what can you also see your current self in, like the media, and the representation and the feeling of like people actually acknowledge me as being or existing. So yeah, I think it's a huge thing for especially younger children.
100%. Max, you spoke about how you looked up to people in bands and stuff. What do you think makes a role model? Like, is it their actions, because you know they're playing the drums, or is it like more their morals and values?
I don't know. It's quite that's quite a broad sort of, you know, criteria of what makes role models. I mean, I feel like it's a lot to do with what you achieve as well, because I mean, completely separate from bands, but you know, like Barack Obama is a role model. He just is, and he always will be. And whether he wanted to be or not, he just will be, won't he? And because he achieved being president, you know, as a black man, and that is going to be something that black people going into politics are always going to look up to, and always going to, you know, think about the tactics and what he did and what he did and what he stood for to get where he was. And I feel like, you know, the drummers that I looked up to in bands, you know, they had to have been visible. They weren't necessarily people that I knew personally, but they'd have to reach a certain amount of fame for me to know them and to be exposed to them. And yeah, and I do feel, because again, when I said that the runners were the sort of first people that I had as role models that I chose, that was at quite a young age. So I was still quite impressionable as the way that media sort of idolizes people, which I really don't think is necessarily always a good thing, because I mean, as we have all come to find out at some point in our lives, the media is not concerned with what is good for you as a person. They're concerned with what they can do to make you spend more money on them. So the sort of people that they idolize are people that, to become like them, you would have to spend a lot of money, and you'd have to do a lot of you know, you'd have to consume a lot of, you know, just corporate ploys. You'd have to just buy into it, and that actually sort of brings me back to my first point, because I kind of wanted to patch it up about because obviously I know that some people don't have parents to be their role models when they're young. I didn't. My dad was in Brazil from from before I have memory to when I was 10. So he didn't have a hand in raising me at all. So yeah, I obviously had to look elsewhere for like male role models. But yeah, and I understand that some people have are raised by carers or other members of their family. But I still stick to my point that your parents are role models, because I also believe that role models don't necessarily have to be positive. Role models, like the ones that are a lot of the time idolized by the media and like magazines and stuff, as we all know, that's a very severe discrepancy in the media. Yeah, that they can be really negative, and if your parents aren't there when you're at a young age, that will still have an effect on you, a negative effect. So, and it will, and even if they are there to raise you, they could have a negative effect on you. On you growing as a person, if they're not good role models. But whether they are good or whether they are not, they are still role models. So yeah.
There's some good points there. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, can I add to that? I think on Max's point, you can't really it may lead to another question, but you can't really someone will perceive anyone as a role model depending on their circumstance. So, a role model isn't someone, it's not necessarily someone someone can become just because they were on in a particular platform, but it's because their actions dictated the kind of positive or negative effects on that person's life. So, you can never really, you as a person can never really pick it. So going back to your point with Barack Obama, I mean, for some people, besides his actual politics, I can see where many people go like, he was a good president because, wow, the image was there. He presented himself in such a manner, in such a swagger way. You thought, man, this is the guy, this is it. But besides your political view, besides your political view, he still had that kind of presence about him, which many people reach to as a role model. So it really could be anyone. For me, it could be other Black leaders like Larry Elder or Dr. Ben Carson, or many other people like that. So it is what it is, really. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to that and just say, like, more recently, like in my day-to-day life, I've had the opportunity of like meeting people that have become my role models. So for me personally, I would say that a couple of my role models are Cleo Lake, who we will speak to later, and then also I'm really bad at saying names, but his name is Olamiposi. He's a musician, a filmmaker, and like entrepreneur. And yeah, like they're just a couple of the people that I've had the opportunity to work with, but then they are now my role models. So yeah, it's just anyone, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I think we only have a few minutes left of this segment, but I just want to quickly ask this question. A few of you spoke a bit on this topic, but how can like a role model be quite toxic for some people? Because like you talked about how your parents could be a negative role model.
Yeah, I did say your parents can be role models, or anyone that any of your first role models, if they're not if they're not okay, well let's move along to a different stage in time. In school, that's sort of the first time that people really ask you to think about role models, more because of the fact that as you get higher up in the years, they tell you that you are a role model for your younger peers, for the younger years, and that's probably the first time you really think about it, and you're like, oh wow, things that I do really, and the way I present myself, the way I carry myself, the things I say, they have an impact on people who are more impressionable than me. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm not impressionable, but it keeps going, and and therefore there can be you know, there's some people that just don't really care about that. When they hear that, they're like, oh, I don't care. And that would be toxic. And the sad thing is that, as I said, it carries on. That goes on all the way to when you're an adult, when you're successful at your career, when you're, you know, when you have children and grandchildren, you could still be toxic. Yeah, and the bad thing about idolization in the media as well is that a lot of people idolize these people. It's like they don't care, they don't know you, they don't care about you. That's why I think something that Osei said was really good and that I really agree with, that it's something that you learn hopefully as you get older, is that you can have role models that like you actually know and that in your personal sphere of life, and that maybe not necessarily anyone else looks up to, but or not like loads of people. But I also have met a lot of people who, you know, I've realised that I really like, you know, I really aspire to be you know, for certain parts of their personality or their influence. You know, and I also really, you know, I really appreciate what they do, and it inspires me to you know, to do the same things. So yeah, but then a lot of the people that we're sort of coerced into idolizing from a young age, they don't know you, and they're not doing what they're doing for you, and they don't care whether you like them, or they don't care whether you're whether they're a role model for you or not. That they don't get anything or lose anything either way. But I feel like people that you choose to be your idols, that and to be your role models who are in your, you know, personal sphere, you know, they because they know you, they know that they have an effect on you, and you can tell them that, and they'll be able to appreciate that, or tell you that's not a good idea because I'm not a good role. I don't consider myself a good role model, or but basically I think role models are people.
Wait. That's a really good point, you guys. But we're gonna continue this in the next segment. But we really need to introduce Leeza onto the chat. So, but we will continue this. So, yeah. So we're gonna introduce her onto the chat.
Hello.
Hey, Leeza.
Hello. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hey, Leeza. So do you just want to quickly introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I am Leeza Awojobu. I'm a poet and storyteller based here in Bristol, and I mainly write to raise questions about human nature. So that's what I do.
That's very good. So let's just go straight into the first question, which is, do you think that artists, because you're an artist yourself, do you think that they are role models? And if yes, what makes them a role model?
So I think it's a complex question. I think overall, yes, we are role models. And the thing that makes us role models is because we are being paid to produce work that society or our circle or this city values. For example, no matter how amazing somebody might be at their lyricism or their craft, or no matter how skilled they might be in their ability to put on a good show, if they were seeking to promote views which the community deemed as unethical or counter to what we should be teaching, I guess, the next generation, that person is not going to be able to exist for a very long time in our space. So I think by virtue of that, that's what makes us role models.
Yeah, I agree. Does anyone have any questions or anything?
I want to just say, like, just in recent years, especially, like, there has been this a thing with people, artists and celebrities, if we call them celebrities, having their past being questioned because of their actions. And I think there has definitely been periods of time where people sort of bridge the line between being a role model and being idealized. And within that bridging, it becomes a case where their negative traits are not seen and people just sort of ignore it in favor of saying, oh yeah, but look at all the good stuff they do. And I think that is what we need to be looking at more carefully rather than like the whole idea of role models.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it becomes sort of not so good when the integrity isn't valued, and your public persona is quite distant to who you are in private. But it is also tricky because, you know, I am not just my poetry, right? I think there's a healthy degree of separation from what I do, even though it's an extension of who I am. And I think we can perhaps get into dangerous territory where, like you were saying, Osei, like something will be dug up from the past of someone, and then we basically say they can't be a role model at all because they once had this view, or or perhaps they're just kind of seen as that, like they're not valued in the same way.
That's true. It kind of links to something that was said through Charles Barkley, an NBA star. He said that I'm not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I'm paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. So that kind of links to the whole point of, should you, as someone who has a lot of like influence, set a good example? Is that your responsibility? Like, do you think if you have a following, naturally you should be setting a positive image towards people?
Yes, I think so. I think what I find interesting about that quote is that the person seems to like imply that they're not teaching their kids. But of course, if you spend all Sunday watching NBA and like you get your food out and it's a big event, in a way, inadvertently, you are already teaching them, even though you're not teaching them about, you know, the perhaps more important things in life. You're teaching them what might be a potential for them, for their future. So I think that is, for me, a bit, I think is a bit insufficient for them to say that.
So do you think we should, or people who are like artists and in the public eye, should be taking responsibility or at least acknowledging that they have that effect?
Yes, at least acknowledging and being aware that by mere virtue of someone saying, hey, your work is valuable, this should be shown on various platforms. I think with that privilege also comes responsibility. But then that doesn't then mean we should then live for that, solely for that, because we're human beings and we're complex.
Okay.
Tyreke, what do you think about the quote?
I think it's very, as everyone said, I think it's quite problematic, because you as the individual cannot choose who looks at you as a role model or not. I mean, everyone here is a role model to someone, as an older brother or a younger sister or whatever the case may be. So I think everyone has a responsibility to do the best that they are doing in their lives in order to be that example, even though like you don't actually want to be a role model, but by living an example, you're going to be. So the best thing I could say is just not be a hypocrite. The things that you do in your public life, you should be doing in your private life. So for example, like many of these celebrities are doing things like, like for example, recently this whole like Black Lives Matter, and people like, yeah, we need to burn this down, celebrities. And then when the protesters are coming to their neighborhoods, burning their things, they're like, oh no, don't do that, that's wrong. You know, the wrong type of So they have to be very they have to live a life that's not contradictory. That you can see that they're growing through a change, not saying publicly, yeah, it's okay, and then privately, no, it's not okay. So I think you have to define who you are by what you do, but don't let that be the main thing that controls you. Like for me, I'm an entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur, is that the only thing I do? No, I do multiple things. I even play the piano. So like, I shouldn't just be defined by what I do, but the example I'm setting, the ways how I'm doing these things are in a way that's positive and illustrates to other people. You can do it too, not in a hypocritical way, like, you know. But that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, that's good. We've got about 5 minutes left, so let's move on to the next question, which says, we spoke a bit about this earlier, but how can the idea of role models be toxic to young people?
Yeah, I think it can be toxic when we essentially idolize or elevate mere human beings, to the extent where we don't allow them space to fail, or if they do fail, it's such a shock to our system. Now, that's it's very hard for that to always be at the back of our minds, that this person actually might shock me, because social media is handcrafted to only show the highlights, show the popular consensus, and that's why that can be toxic to young people, because essentially we're only promoting like one side of the story. And then as well, I think it can be toxic when we don't value integrity. Like I said before, I think integrity is so important. That doesn't mean that there's no space for them to fail or to fall short of like the standard that we kind of expect them to be. It just means that if they are consistently living in their private lives in a way which denies what they seem to be promoting publicly, then that's toxic.
That's good. Does anyone else have any points?
I do.
Go.
Sorry again, Ty. But I had a thought about what you said when you first came in, which was interesting, and that something you said about the people who create content that isn't helpful and isn't positive, essentially will eventually be taken off of the pedestal. Maybe I'm not quite sure. I can't remember exactly what the point was, but it made me think of sort of and you were saying about how it relates to the younger generations, and it made me think about how like the largest sort of the largest popular musical genre at the moment in the younger generation is drill, which is crazy because that is extremely toxic and doesn't promote any positive behavior whatsoever. But still, it's still being marketed to young people, and there I know younger people that who are they're really nice, but they're not bad people at all. They don't do any of these things, but still, if you ask them what sort of music they listen to, and they'll be like drill, and they'll know the artists, and these are the people that they will idolize because that's just the way that music and media works. And I'm sure that you have a lot of artists, being someone who creates content about humanity and sort of natural natural sort of personalities and stuff, you know, I'm sure you have artists and people that you have as role models, that you really wish more people would listen to, because when you listen to it, you're like, man, I really resonate with that, and it really makes me think about more positive things, and makes me like think, you know, what, like it breaks down my sort of negative prejudices and barriers. And I just wish that that was what was marketed to young people, so that more people could come into the same. And then I'm therefore also sure that that's what inspires you to you know, write what you do, because I rap, and when I you know, and over the years my lyrical content has evolved due to what other music I've listened to, what other opinions I've seen, and it changed from just being a bit of fun to actually being like, man, this is actually, I can actually sort of get out the sort of thoughts that I have about important issues. So I imagine that's what you do with your poetry. So yeah, I was just finding that as an interesting point that you said that.
Yes.
It was like the prominent genre.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think you said that it's obvious that what they're promoting isn't positive. And what I would say to that, I absolutely agree. What I would say to that is, they think what they're promoting is positive. They're promoting in what they see as strength, brotherhood, loyalty, being able to earn money your own way, as opposed to rely on institutions which don't care about young Black boys. So it's an understanding of what is positive. I think that that's not a long-term solution, but obviously it's appealing to the masses, and that's where, and that's why in that space you don't hear the opposite message of, oh no, you know, education is an option for you, or whatever it might be. You don't hear of that in that space, because they will tell you, no, it's not, and I'm going to support myself by living this life.
I think.
Wait, sorry, if I could ask a quick question, kind of an extension of yours. Can you separate the art from the artist? So if the art is kind of inoffensive, but the artist is that okay to be like, oh, I just listen to the art, or I just like their work instead of the person themselves? Is that still a confliction of who they are? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
I think there has to be. So were you saying if the art is offensive, or if the artist is offensive?
Yeah, the artist is offensive, but the art is just inoffensive. It's just not. It's not everything. Like how we were talking about, like in certain like musicians, like certain musics are kind of like, we would say is bad for the community. It's like quite kind of harsh lyrics and things like that. But I mean, no, they're kind of fluffy lyrics, like good songs, you know, happy good songs. But the artists themselves are being, you know, in kind of like scandals and things. So is it okay to be like that? That's you know, the artist is different from the actual art that they produce, or should we kind of cancel both, or are you into canceling anyone, or, you know, I don't know, because you clearly mentioned like it's okay if they like do it to kind of fund themselves and help other people in certain aspects, but is what they're doing right? I don't know.
I wasn't saying that it's okay that that's what they're doing. I'm just saying that that's the reality of the situation. I'm not a fan of cancelling. I think, but having said that though, I'm not a fan of cancel culture. Having said that though, I think it is impossible to completely separate the art from the artist, because art is such a place which is close to your heart, it's close to your mind, it's linked up with your worldview. And so I think there needs to be a degree of separation, but to separate it totally is impossible. It's like separating totally a child from its parent. You can't do that in a total sense.
I want to kind of like connect both points. I think that we have to take into account that for a specific demographic of people, there is like this mindset or this view that the only way to get out of your current situation is to do these things that are seen as toxic in the wider world. They are toxic, I'm not denying that, but like that is potentially their only route out of their current situation. So whilst it is toxic to potentially everyone else around them, we have to understand that to them at that point in time, it helped them to get out of a situation that no person should ever be in. So to an extent, like those behaviors have some usefulness to people. And at the same time, on Ty's point, I think we have to, it's not that I would say I'm a fan of cancel culture. I think we have to take note of the bad things that people do and say, okay, cool, this person is not somebody that we should be looking up to. You can still like their work or be friends with them, but we should not be looking up to them in the way that we did before. We shouldn't be idealizing them in the way that we did before. But yeah.
Okay. We're running out of time on this segment, but I just want to say thank you, Leeza, for joining us.
You guys.
Really
Is there anywhere we can listen to your stuff or something?
Yeah, sure. So you can check out eyesandoath.com or Eyes and Oath on YouTube.
So like Eyes and...
Yeah, Eyes and Oath, like an oath in court. And yeah, I actually just released a new poem today. So if you go to my YouTube page, you'll be able to check that out.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna quickly say, you guys, if you're a young person, please get in touch with Babbasa because they can help you with your dreams. And if you're a person with cash, please can you donate to Babbasa's Beyond COVID appeal so that we could keep doing what we're doing. So thank you. And now we're gonna bring on our next speaker, who is Cleo. She's gonna join us.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Would you quickly like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here with you to have this discussion about role models. My name's Cleo Lake, as you know. I live in Bristol. I'm from Bristol. I'm an artist, so I'm also a director with Black Artists on the Move. I'm a local councillor for the Green Party here. I'm an activist, if you want to put that label on me, and I'm standing to be the next deputy leader of the Green Party of England and Wales.
It's very good. So,
Stuff.
Cleo's incredible.
okay, I think we should just go to the first question. So, do you think that we need role models to be empowered?
I think sometimes we do, but we always need, I think, or I always need inspiration. I need to see people doing things, having bravery and taking action so that I can feel that either I'm on the right path or that there is a precedent that is being set. Sometimes we can't always find the influence we might want to see, but it also kind of depends on how we frame this idea of role models. And I think you've discussed that can be anyone. It can be someone in your family, someone you see locally in your community, somebody who is doing something or presenting something in a way that speaks to you and perhaps your journey now or the journey that you aspire to. So yeah, I have kind of tried to think about it and think, even growing up, maybe when I was in my young teenage years, it could have been anything. It could have been more about people in my community who I might have loved the way they did their hair. To me, that would have been a role model at that age, or someone who was into business, or someone else who, when I thought about it, actually a woman I really did look up to as a youngster, and it would be a surprise to many people, but it was an athlete called Irina Privalova. She was a Russian athlete who was solid. And just watching her, how she would sprint and seeing her muscles and the grit and the determination. She never usually won a race, but she was solid and she just looked like a strong woman. And that was someone who I really admired.
That's nice. That's really nice.
I just want to pick up on that. I think everyone has said that the majority of role models they have is because it's a trait that they want to replicate in themselves. Is that something you think is like a necessity for role models, or is there other like ways of being a role model?
I think having a label as role model, I think for the role models themselves, it almost encourages people to step up their game, and that could be anything. It could be in terms of their work, or it could be how they conduct themselves in certain environments. You know, I guess it's having that consciousness that other people might be noting what you're doing, and that element of responsibility, but not being too tied to not doing what is in your heart to do because you're too worried about what other people might think.
Yeah.
There's actually a question that came in from Lizzie, and she's asking, do you think role models are always older than you, or do you think your role models could be your peers?
Role models can be any age. You know, we don't have to think in the sort of typical way of, well, it's about a young person looking up to someone who's older than them. I think that's a complete nonsense. I know people who might be 18, 19, who've got amazing ideas. They've already done a lot in their life and have got more to contribute to a conversation than someone who might be in their 50s. So I don't really work on that kind of linear age time frame. But yeah, so, and of course, people who are in your maybe peer group, your friends, yeah, it's all relevant, but I do have a certain level of respect for people who are older than me. And when it comes to actions and activism, I do think it's really important that me, myself, I understand the work that's been put in by people who are older than, who happen to be older than me, and the movement that has got us to this point, so that I don't have to feel that either I'm on my own or that there isn't lessons to learn, because I think sometimes we feel that it can be a lonely road and that we're doing these actions or we're having these thoughts and it's never happened before, but actually we usually find that things go round in a cycle. So I think for me, it's important that I do always communicate with people who are older than me and also people who are younger than me.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree?
I would say I agree 100%. Just because one, like I was saying earlier, one of my current role models is someone that is like of a similar age to me. So yeah, I would say he is definitely not older. It's not a case of like someone that's older that has more experience or anything. It's just people who you can like learn from, I would say.
Tyreke, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah. I think again, I like that whole thing, kind of like with, especially with your elders. You kind of, for most role models, you kind of look up to them because they paved the way. So there's actually a living example you can go by to show how we can move forward for our generation. But then when you look at the younger generation, they can be seen as a role model too, because they're the future generation that's going to grow from us and then also pave a new way for the next one. And for example, for me, I sometimes look at, like, for example, my brother. He's younger than me. He's 9 years old. Actually 10 now. He's so he's kind of easygoing. He's kind of like, he can forgive people so easily. And I sometimes forget, man, was I like that as a kid? Simple things of like courtesy and things like that, I kind of forget. But my brother's so easy be able to like kind of take on things that, like, you know, for example, bullying or something. And I'm like, man, he took it on the chin. If that was me, I'd probably be so angry about that. But you gotta kind of look at, you kind of go look at them and be like, wow, they're learning. maybe I'm getting older and grumpier, but he's something I look up to sometimes too, like in terms of the behavior. And even people I don't even agree, like say politically, I can sometimes respect how they conduct themselves, and I look up to them and take certain traits of how they convey themselves to other people. So, you know, it doesn't have to be, even if I like your political views, it could just be the way how you live your life, the best parts of how you live your life. And that's how I think most people should live, not kind of looking at a pedestal of something you can't reach, but looking at reality and saying, what can you do with the things that are given to you, and, you know, form it based on your own experience and how to lead your life for other people. So I think it's all pretty good, old or new, old or young. So I think that's the best thing.
No, I think it's a really good point that's been brought up by Cleo and touched on by everyone else, is that I think that there should be more people who do look to younger generations for inspiration and respect younger generations, because, you know, it's a traditional thing to look to people who are older than you for as role models, essentially, because of the reasons that you've all expressed. But yeah, as I was saying earlier about when it can be toxic, when role models can be toxic, and I was saying that it carries on up to, throughout our lives, essentially. I know a lot of people who, once they get to a certain age, they think that they know everything because they're old, because that's what we're taught. We're taught that, like, once you're like 18, you are an adult, and that means that, you know, you've been through your your lower education, you should have, you know, this and that, you should have job, house, you know, thinking about starting a family already, and that's what's been the ideas that have been passed down to us through generations. And, you know, that breeds this, like, toxicity, that, like, once you get, like, to an adult age, which you're fully grown or whatever, you are grown, like, your personality is grown. It's like, no, the most wise people in history have known and have always preached that they're still learning themselves. They're still yearning for more information and for more, like, to see from more points of view, and to grow their perspective. And there will always be people who respect and listen to the younger generation, because like Cleo and like Ty and like Osei said, like, those people that will pave the way that your elders have paved the way for you and your generation. The younger generation are going to pave the way for the next generation, and also they're going to have the fresher ideas. They're going to have all the experiences that we and our predecessors have passed down to them. So hopefully, you know, that they'll be the like the most evolved and the most sort of they'll have the most rounded view of and perspective of things, because hopefully all of other people's influences have been, you know, it'll have fed into them, so they'll, you know, and I think we should all, you know, and I think people in general should start looking more to equal, at least, to have younger people as role models. Just because they're younger than you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're more intelligent or more grown or more like experienced even than them. So yeah.
Yeah, if I can just respond to that, I think it's been very damaging. The line that many of us were fed is that children should be seen and not heard. And I think that's prevailed quite harshly through our society over here in England for a long time. But we've seen with, you know, the climate strike movement, we've seen with Black Lives Matter, how it is being led by young people. I think my campaign as deputy leader is about how I can support young people and their movements, because I understand how important it is. But I think one thing that is very different to even when I was around your ages is social media. And whilst we can say some young people may have a rounded perspective, we also have to be aware of the influences that are bombarded onto all people. But I think some young people are particularly susceptible to it. So without a grounding, and that can be in your culture or other things, I think there's some dangers that I don't know, people might become a little bit misguided, but you know, I don't have all the answers to that, but I would say it was definitely an observation, and certainly in terms of peer pressure.
I agree. So guys, we're moving on to the final 5 minutes of this show. So I just want to quickly ask you guys, like, do you feel like you are a positive role model to others?
I guess I'll go first. I would say I don't see myself as a role model, but I definitely have been told in the past that I have an effect on younger Black boys that makes or gives them the confidence to do what they want to do. And I think that that is a good thing, but it has, like Cleo was saying, it has made me aware that I do need to have to, like, be aware of that effect and take note of it, and how that affects other people. But yeah.
Does anyone else feel like they're a role model to others?
I think that we are all role models just automatically, as we've sort of come to the conclusion of over this discussion. I would never, you know, sort of recommend people to see me as a role model, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't sort of understand I have a responsibility, and I am always like conscious that, you know, whenever I to present myself to people, whoever sees that, that's going to influence them. You know, whether they like me or not, it's going to make them decide whether they want to be like that or don't want to be like that. And, you know, you just have to be conscious of that. You just have to accept that that is a reality, and, you know, not deny it, and not just be apparently this, that artist we heard about earlier, or not artist, it was Charles Barkley or something, said that, you know, I'm not a role model. That's just denial. You are a role model. You just have to accept that. Whether you choose to be a good one or a bad one, that's your own prerogative.
Very good point. Tyreke, do you feel like you're a role model to others?
There's connection cutting out.
Okay.
That's right.
Cleo, do you feel like you're a role model to other people?
Hello?
Is he back? No?
Oh,
Okay, I don't know if Ty's there, is he? I don't see him. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, to some extent, I suppose. But I would really hope that standing for deputy leader of Green Party England and Wales would maybe not necessarily push me out there as a role model, but inspire people to get involved in mainstream politics. I advocate for, you know, doing as much as you can outside of the mainstream, and also trying to change the mainstream. So I really, really hope that whether I'm successful or not, it will inspire other people to think that they can stand for a political office, and that it is important, and that our views are valid, and that they must be listened to. So to be able to use that platform to give voice to young people, to people of African heritage, to others who don't really have, they may have a voice, but they're not getting the actions in the mainstream.
Sorry, I did have a quick question for Cleo. Am I right in saying that you were the first Black female Lord Mayor of Bristol?
Yeah. In 801 years.
In what?
801 years.
In 801
wow.
years, first Black or female, and you were both. I think that's something that, you know, I feel like you're a role model in that, not only because of all of the, you know, the activism you do in your political party, but that's a great achievement.
Thank you. I would just say though, role model or not, all of us, if we are role models, we all need support. You know, role models can't just exist in a kind of intangible, out there sort of way. We are real people doing real things, and we all need support.
Absolutely.
I think Tyreke is back. So do you want to quickly say something before it's finished? Because
sorry about my McDonald Wi-Fi here, man. Keep cutting out. I believe, yeah, everyone's a role model. I think I am a role model in terms of my faith, in terms of my community, in terms of my culture. I'm a representative of many things, but I think it can only go so far depending on how willing you're going to take your role model's quote unquote status to be. So if you claim to be a representative, then you better make sure that what you do in your public life is reflected in your private life too. So I say, yeah, I am. I hope to be one of the best examples. I'm not perfect, so I don't think if I fall or mess up, like Cleo said, I would hope to have a council of people to kind of rectify and show that, hey, if I'm going the wrong way, push me the right way, because I being a representative to some people, I'm gonna be the best. So it's good to have that kind of same principle for everyone else. So
yeah, 100% agree. But we're finished now. The show's come to an end. So I just want to thank you, Cleo Lake, for coming on and speaking to us. You're really inspirational. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for joining us and having this discussion. It was really good. And I just want to thank everyone for watching and commenting. I meant to have this call for action thing, but it signed itself out. So I'm just going to say, please, if you're watching this and you have money, please can you donate to Babbasa, because, it can help keep this going on. And also, if you're a young person and you're looking for help with a future career, or you just want to talk to someone, please contact Babbasa. And you can contact Ravania. Her details are in the description. So you can contact us and get in contact, get some help with whatever you need. And thank you for watching. We'll be back here in 2 weeks' time. So make sure you come and tune in.
Thank you.